And we're in. Thank you for coming out on this cold, snowy, late November's evening. We're really happy to be here, and this evening is going to be a celebration. Myself and Janis received an invitation to Jordan. When I say that, people say, "What, you mean the country?" So yes, the country, not a person. We're invited to the country of Jordan. And so we spent 9 days in August in the Levant. And we were invited out 2 of 3 storytellers from Scotland, but as part of a wider pool of storytellers from the Arab world. There were storytellers from Jordan, obviously, Palestine, Egypt, Tunisia, and as far away as Morocco. And we gathered together in something called a mujawara. Would you like to get your tongue around that? Would you like to say mujawara? Mujawara. You're doing better. It took me a whole week to just... I was like, what are we doing again? Mujawara. And the idea of a mujawara is a gathering. And the idea was that it was a uniquely Arabic model of learning, of sharing. There was something very organic in its nature, and each of us offered something over the week. But really, what each of us presented in our session was only a small part of it. Where the learning really takes place is over thick Palestinian coffee in the morning, or over a fine spread of food, or telling stories and singing songs under a clear, starlit sky. So we had this treat for maybe a week, and then we had to go out and tell stories on the streets and city squares. And I was relatively lucky. I got the relatively civilized city of Amman after 3 days of seeing what other people were doing, whereas Janis was thrown in at the deep end on the first night in this town called Salt, where there seemed to be a really high proportion of teenage boys hanging about, and they weren't quite sure what to make of us. So she got the kind of baptism of fire, but it was a really rich experience. Okay, what can we take from Scotland that relates to people on the street in this part of the world? And I think both of us, when we came back, we were really touched by the hospitality, by the warmth of the people there, by all these kind of cultural insights you can only get when you go to a place. And there are miles apart from the images that I've seen of the Arab world or of Islam on television. So I just feel as storytellers, when we go and get these kind of visceral experiences, there is maybe a responsibility to participate in the narratives that are told of different cultures, different countries. So we came back, we're like, okay, we're excited, and let's tell some stories, let's sing some songs. And then October happened, and we've seen this conflict erupt in the region. So it would be tasteless to tell stories from the region and not at least acknowledge that. There's not going to be a political discourse tonight. We're not going to go too heavy on the horrors that have unfolded, because I would get out of my depth very quickly. I've been there for a week, and I enjoyed meeting the people I met. That's as much as I know. But we do have friends in the West Bank, in Palestine. We have our friend Hamza, a storyteller, who's also a man of the earth, who's a farmer, and took us out one morning and explained the stories of each of the plants that were growing, the stories of the olive tree, of all the different flowers, and relayed that belief in his culture that when you really know the plants that grow in an area, no one can deny your right or your belonging in that landscape. And at the end, he gifted us this satar, this stage. So we have a little nod to Hamza, the farming storyteller, here on the stage. And so as such, any funds coming from tonight will go and support emergency aid in Gaza. And maybe we don't need to say too much more about that, but that's the setting for this evening's gathering. Another footnote. We have Omar, now a musician from Essaouira in Morocco, arriving on Essaouiran time. So we're not sure quite when he'll emerge. I'm hoping it's not in mid-story. I'm hoping it's not a kind of moment of suspense, but we'll see. There's a little suspense in the air over that. And Janis, her voice has just about come back. We thought she might not be able to tell stories tonight and you might be treated to 45 minutes of interpretive dance. Her voice is back. And she'll be telling stories too. And we also have Gica, who wasn't on the programme but is going to add some music to tonight's affairs. So with that all said and done, would you like to hear a story?
Yes!
Okay. So we're going to start with a story from the further reaches of our Mujawara gathering. This story comes from Morocco. And actually, once upon a time, I told this story in an interview for the Village Storytelling Centre, who are well represented at tonight's gathering. A long time ago in Morocco, in a busy village, there was a grumpy old man. Can I see some grumpy faces? Grumpier than that. Meaner, foul-looking, always with a scowl upon his brow. He was always muttering under his breath. Let's hear some of that too. He was always shaking his fist at the children that were playing noisily in the street. He was bad-tempered, he was cantankerous, as you might expect. He didn't have many friends. In fact, he had no friends. He didn't have a partner or a wife, even though deep down, somewhere in that cold, stony heart of his, he dearly yearned for it. He was lonely. Can we hear an awe for this grumpy old man? It's even sadder than that. Well, anyway, one day he was in the market. It was a busy, hot day. It was market day, and he'd bought himself some cooked beans. And he was eating these cooked beans, these cooked salted beans, and the market was a disgrace. It was noisy, it was busy, it was smelly. There were stalls laden with spices and fabrics and ornate crafts, but he could barely move for the hustle and the bustle of people. He could barely hear himself think, let alone sit and enjoy this snack in peace. He thought, where can I find to sit and be alone and enjoy my snack in peace? And he gazed around the market, the stalls, the people, the children playing, the dogs scrounging after food. The well, a nice, cool, shady spot. That's the place to sit and eat my snack. So he made his way through the bustling crowds, knocking people out his way, out of my way, out of my way, kicking stray dogs and children on the way past. And he was so busy knocking people out of the way and cursing the folk who stood between him and the well that he didn't watch where he was putting his feet. And as he came close to the well, he tripped. And as he tripped, his last bean flew up into the air and sploosh, landed in the bottom of the well. Well, he was still hungry. He'd paid for that bean. Held out, my bean, give me back my bean. What did he say?
My bean, give me back my bean.
All of a sudden, there was a flash, there was a puff of blue smoke, and there standing on the edge of the well was a genie, with curled, pointed shoes, with baggy blue pants, with a fancy embroidered waistcoat, with a turban upon his head and a curled moustache, with flaming red eyes. Who is making all this noise at my well? It's Omar. I'm pleased you're here. You're going to catch the second half of a Moroccan story.
Amazing.
We've got a grumpy old man whose bean has fallen down a well. Where were we? The Genie. The Genie.
Who's making all this stuff?
Who's making all this racket? He said, I am. I dropped my bean down your well. I'd paid for that bean. I demand you give it back. One measly bean. All this fuss over one bean. Yes, my bean. I'd paid for it. It's down your well. You are responsible. I'm not leaving until you give it back. And the Genie thought, there's no way I'm finding that bean. But I know I'm not going to get rid of this old rogue unless I do something to placate him. He scratched. He twirled his moustache. I tell you what, I can't get your bean, but I have something even better. And he pulled out an old clay pot with strange markings round the side and said, take this pot, take it home and wish for whatever type of food you would like. And the grumpy man looked suspiciously at this pot. Very well. He took it home. He laid it on his table. And what did he wish for? Beans, okay. I would like some beans, please. And there they were. Crispy and salted just the way he liked them. And he tasted them. They were better than the ones they sold in the market. He scooped them out, placed them in a bowl. But come on. He's got a magic pot. You can't only wish for beans. What else did he wish for?
Chips.
Chips. It's a classic Scottish. He wished for chips. And they were also crispy and salty. He wished for something more regional. What is a fine dish from this part of the world? Tagine, the lamb tagine and the meat.
Prawns and almonds.
With what?
Prawns and almonds.
With prunes and almonds. That was better than the chips. And the meat was tender, the prunes were sweet, the almonds were crunchy, and it was delicious. But you can't have tagine without couscous on the side. So he had that, and it had melted butter in it, and he kept wishing and wishing and wishing till he had a whole table laden with food. And in fact, there was so much food, he got so carried away, there was more than he could eat. His appetite was satisfied. Well, he didn't have many friends, but he could invite the neighbours round to sample the food and show off his fine magic pot. So he invited people round, they tried the tagine, they tried the couscous, they dipped the chips into the tagine too. They sampled the food and everyone was delighted, for they got to try this food, they got to see this amazing magic pot, and they could see this grumpy old man was this little bit less grumpy. So everyone was happy, and the grumpy old man, well, wasn't quite happy, but he was definitely less miserable. Everyone was happy, except one jealous old lady. Why should he have that pot? I want that pot for myself. What has he done to deserve it? He's a grumpy old rascal. He doesn't deserve it. I would make much better use of that pot. So, she waited till the moon was full and high in the sky. She crept through the streets. She prized open his window. She snuck inside, snatched up his pot and replaced it with one that looked just like her. Exactly. And she went home and she wished for tagine and couscous and chips and all the good stuff too, and didn't share it with anyone. Well, the next day, the grumpy old man woke up. He yawned, he stretched. He went downstairs, he saw his pot on his table and thought, what do I want for breakfast on this fine morning? What's a good breakfast to wish for? Shakshuka. Someone's almost stumped me with that before in life. Was it you? I'm terrorised by that word. Shakshuka, thanks. I wish for shakshuka. Nailed it. And nothing happened. He cleared his throat clear enough so the pot could hear. I would like shakshuka. Nothing happened. That genie's tricked me. He snatched up the pot. He stormed out the house, through the streets, through the market, back to the marketplace. Genie, 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 this pot is broken. I demand a new one. Whoosh. Genie popped out. looked at the pot once, that is not the pot I gave you. And I only had one like it. But you could see how disappointed the grumpy old man looked. He could tell he didn't have much going on for him in his life. He felt a little bit sorry for him. I tell you what, I've got another pot. Take this pot and wish for whatever drink, whatever refreshment you would like. So the man took this back, laid it on the table. He wished for sweet mint tea. Whoosh, there it was, and he sipped it. It was delicious. He slightly naughtily wished for wine, finer than any he'd tasted. He wished for Arak. He wished for Arak, which was somehow harder to say than shakshuka. He wished for all these things till again his table was spread with fine things to drink. Too much for one person. He invited people round. They sampled the tea, they sampled the wine, they sampled the Arak. It was delicious. Everyone enjoyed it. Everyone enjoyed the mystique of the pot. Everyone enjoyed seeing this grumpy old man was a little bit less grumpy. Except the jealous old lady. Why should he have that pot? I want that pot too. And so she waited till again the moon rose high in the sky. She crept through the dark alleyways and streets. She prized open his window, crept inside, snatched up that pot and didn't even replace it with another. Went home and she was straight on the Arak. She had far too much that night. She slept all through the next afternoon. She wasn't even conscious when the grumpy old man woke up, went downstairs and saw his empty table. No magic pot. He was a bit embarrassed as he left his house, as he made his way through the streets asking if anyone had seen his pot. By the time he made it to the marketplace, by the time he made it to the well, the genie was waiting there, arms crossed, tapping his foot. I've heard all about it. People are talking about it right across the marketplace. If you're going to tell everyone about these magic pots and just leave them lying around, what do you expect to happen? I've got one final pot for you. Take this pot, fill it with water and look inside and you will see where the first two pots have gone to. So thankfully he took this pot, he took it home, he laid it on the table, he filled it with water, stared inside, and there was the pot with the food. There was the pot with the drink. There was the face of the jealous old lady. I know that woman. I know where she lives. And he burst out of his house, he stormed through the street, went straight up to her door. When he arrived at the door, banged on the door, called out, I know you've got them, give me my pots back right now. You thief, you rascal, they're mine, they don't belong to you. And he waited for a response. And he was met with terrible shrieking and cursing and swearing. What did you do to deserve those pots? You didn't deserve those pots in the first place. If you're stupid enough to leave them lying about, they were always going to get nicked. They're my pots now. You won't get them back. Be gone. If you're still here in 5 minutes, you'll regret it. You rat bag. Oh my God. No one's ever spoken like that to me in my whole life. What terrible manners. What horrendous language. What horrible cursing. What a powerful voice. What a wonderful woman. Said, marry me, jealous old lady. And then the pots will be both of ours. And you know, she agreed. And they had a huge wedding feast with food from one pot and refreshments and drinks from the other, and the music and the dancing went on long and loud into the night. In fact, they say there's never been a wedding like it since, in that or in this part of the world. And from that day, their arguments could be heard all but maybe, in their own way, they were happy. That's the end of that story.
was once a fisherman, and he lived with his wife and his son, and when he caught no fish, they got no food. And he had, for the past few days, caught nothing, and they were hungry. And his wife said, "Take our son Omar, take him down to the sea when you cast your nets, and perhaps we will have luck." And so the fisherman took his son Omar down to the sea, and he cast his net, and sure enough, he caught a fish. Not just a little fish, but a big, beautiful fish. "Omar," he said, "you have brought us luck." And together, father and son, they dragged the fish onto the beach. And then father, all excited, said, "Omar, wait there and look after the fish while I go and get a cart and we'll take it to market." And so the fisherman went off, leaving Omar with the fish. And after a moment, Omar could hear a little voice. "Help me, help me." And Omar looked around and there was no one there, but the voice carried on, "Help me." The voice was coming from the fish's mouth. "Put me back in the sea," the fish cried. "Please, put me back in the sea." And Omar said, I can't put you back in the sea. We have had nothing to eat for days. If I put you back in the sea, my father will be so angry." "Oh, please," the fish begged. "If you put me back in the sea, I promise I will look after you for the rest of your days. Oh, please." Now, Omar was a kind-hearted fellow, and so he agreed. And he pushed the fish down the beach, until the fish reached the water, and he leapt up whoosh, and disappeared. And Omar stood watching. A moment later, a little flash of the fish's fin, which looked like the fish saluting Omar. Well, a moment later, the fisherman came back with the cart. "Where is the fish?" he shouted. "Where is the fish?" And Omar said, "I'm sorry. I put it back in the sea. The fish asked me to. I'm sorry." And the father was so angry, his face turned red. "You what? You do not deserve the blessings of our family. You do nothing to help. You earn no money. You bring in no food. Go." Omar couldn't believe it. "Go," said his father. And his father kicked him out. Well, the fisherman, angry and disappointed, strode back with his cart empty, leaving Omar on the beach, not knowing where to go, what to do. And he turned and he wandered along by the shore. And he hadn't gone far when he saw a boy sitting on a stone, weeping. And the boy looked about the same age as Omar. "What are you crying for?" Omar said, and the boy wiped his tears and looked at him. "I'm crying," said the boy, "because my father kicked me out. He says I do nothing to help. He says I do not deserve the blessings of our family." And Omar couldn't believe it. "That's what my father said to me," he said. And the boy on the stone wiped his tears and put out his hand and shook Omar's hand. "My name is Noah," he said, "and I am Omar." And Noah said that they should be brothers. "Why don't we go around the world together? Go around our land. We can eat, we can find work, we can stay together." And so that is what they did. And they got on well. This story is from Palestine, and there is much to eat. Figs, almonds, what else?
Olives.
Dates, what else? Olives, Yeah, plenty. And then it was warm enough for the boys often to sleep outside. Well, the seasons passed and Omar and Noah grew into young men. But to look at them, they looked like very ragged young men. They'd been living rough. They came to a town, and in this town there was a town crier, and he was calling out, "Whoever can make the princess speak will have her hand in marriage, but if he fail, off with his head." And Noah said, "I would like to try." And Omar pulled him. "No." Omar said, "No, let's leave this town. Let's go somewhere else." "I would like to try," said Noah. And Noah asked someone nearby, "What does the town crier mean?" And a man sitting on a bench told Noah and Omar about the princess, that she had not spoken for many, many months, and her father, the king, had tried everything. But people who came trying to make her talk, they just wanted to stare at her. And so now he added the part, "Off with your head if you don't succeed." And so no one ever tried. But Noah was determined. Even although Omar tried to stop him, Noah ran to the palace, where he was admitted, even although he was very ragged. "Yes," said the king, "what does the ragamuffin want?" To try and help your daughter to speak," said Noah. Now the king's advisor, called the vizier, ushered Noah in. "Well, let me show you the princess," said the vizier. And so the vizier took Noah through the palace to this great chamber where sat the silent princess. "I will tell her a story," said Noah. Well, the vizier shook his head, but he said nothing. This poor boy would surely be dead soon. Let him tell his story. And so Noah began. "There was once 3 friends, a carpenter, a painter, and a monk. And they were on a journey together, and they got lost in a great forest, and night fell, and they decided to make a fire and stay the night. And they decided that they would take turns in keeping watch, in case there were any wild animals coming to attack them. So the first one to stay awake was the carpenter. And while he was sitting by the fire, he spied the trunk of a tree. And to pass the long hours, he took out his carving knife and he carved the trunk of that tree. And he made a beautiful woman. Well, the hours passed so quickly. Soon it was the time of the painter. And he was sitting by the fire, and his eyes saw the statue. "It needs colour," said the painter, and he brought out his paints, and he gave her raven black hair, almond brown eyes. He gave her jewels and clothes, bangles and nail polish. She was beautiful. And again time passed, and then it was the turn of the monk. While he was sitting by the fire, his eyes fell upon this woman, the statue, and he fell in love with her. "If only she would breathe," he said. And so he prayed. For hours he prayed. He prayed that breath would come into her body, that life would flow through her. And by the morning, with the first glimpse of sun in the east, the statue came to life, and the carpenter and the painter woke up. "She is mine," said the carpenter. "I made her, and I will wed her. I will love her forever." Pushed out of the way by the painter, who said, "No, she is mine. I gave her all the beauty. Yes, you made her, but I made her ravishing. I will wed her and love her forever." "No," said the monk. "I gave her life. I will wed her and love her." And so the arguing went on. At this, Noah stopped telling his story. And he looked up and he said, "Who should wed the princess?" The vizier shrugged, but a small voice came from the end of that great hall. The monk. The princess had spoken. The vizier lifted his arms in great joy and ran to tell the king. And Noah, well, his job was done. The princess spoke, and so he bade her good day and left. And he went back to find his brother Omar. And there he was in the streets, and they continued wandering about together when, quite soon after, again there is the town crier, and he's calling out, "A boy called Noah, a boy called Noah must come to the palace now. If he does not come, the vizier will lose his head." Well, Noah didn't know what was going on, but he did not want the vizier to lose his head on account of him. And so he followed this town crier. He went back to the palace. He burst in the palace gates and said, "What's going on?" And there was the king, very angry. "Ragamuffin," he said. "My vizier tells me that my daughter spoke, but she does not speak. And so he is lying. That's why I have called you, to prove it otherwise." For you see, after Noah left, the king, all delighted, ran to his daughter who did not speak. "I will tell a riddle," said Noah. The king shook his head. "Oh, stories, riddles, are you mad?" "It is a silent riddle," said Noah. And the vizier, whose head was in the balance, advised the king, "Let the boy try." And there's the king, there's the vizier, there's the princess, and there is the ragamuffin Noah. And he begins his silent riddle. He points to the king. He points to the vizier, and he points to himself. "Well, that's easy," said His Majesty. "I am the king. He is my vizier, and you are a ragamuffin." Noah shook his head. "That is not the right answer, Your Majesty. Perhaps your vizier would like to try." "Well," began the vizier, looking at the king, "he is the great ruler, and I carry out his commands, and you represent one of his subjects." Again, Noah shook his head. "That is not the right answer." And in the silence that followed, the silent princess lifted her hand, and with her finger she pointed to her father, and she said, "You are the carpenter." And then she pointed to the vizier, "You are the painter." And pointed to Noah, "And you are the monk." Well, the king was delighted that his daughter was speaking, but what did she mean? He was a carpenter? My dear, he said. What are you saying? Let me explain, Father. In the story, the carpenter is the one who makes the woman. You made me. You are my father. I come from you. And the vizier, he gave me my education, my culture, my art. My colour and detail is from him. But Noah, he believed that I would speak. And so he is like the monk. And now I have spoken. And so the king was delighted and announced that Noah could have as much jewels as he wished, until the vizier reminded him that, Your Majesty, it is your daughter's hand in marriage that you promised. Well, the king could not tolerate that. The boy had bare feet, his clothes were in rags, his hair was a mess. Let him go to the baths, said the vizier, and I will bring some fine clothes. Perhaps then your Majesty will think better. And so the vizier took Noah to the town baths. But as Noah was walking along, he called out, "I want my brother Omar, 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 where's Omar?" And so Omar was fetched, and the two of them went to the baths. The vizier waited outside. Noah was given these fine clothes, and in they went to the baths, the hammam. And then Noah gave the clothes to Omar. "You shall marry the princess," he said. Omar didn't know what he was talking about. "It is time for me to go," said Noah. "I promised that I would look after you, that I would always be with you. I have looked after you, and now, with my blessing, you can sit by the side of the princess. You will be well looked after for the rest of your days." Still, Omar did not understand, and Noah guided him to a pool in the baths. And he said, "Bend over, look at the water." And Omar indeed saw that they looked like twins. "How is that?" said Noah. And still Omar did not understand. "I came out of the sea in the shape of you," said Noah. "You were good enough to put me back into the sea, but now I must go. I was that fish, and I have cared for you, but now go to the princess." And Noah embraced his brother Omar, and then he left. And Omar, in a daze, washed, oiled his black hair, put on these fine clothes, and wandered out to be greeted by the vizier. "Ah, Noah, you look better. Come back to the palace." And there was a grand feast, and Omar sat by the princess. Wonderful food, but he had little appetite. and the princess tried to engage him in conversation. And she thought, he is not the same Noah as the one I met today. And she leant closer and she said, tell me another story, Noah. And Omar shook his head. I only know one story, my own story. Then tell me that, she said. And so Omar told the princess about his father, the fisherman, about catching this wonderful fish and then putting the fish back, then meeting Noah and all their journeys and all their adventures up until this very day where here he is sitting in the palace. The princess listened. So you are not Noah? No, he said, I am Omar. So you don't want to marry me, she said. No, you are very beautiful, but I want to travel. I want to have adventures. And so you shall, she said. And when she informed her father that she would not be marrying Noah, he was very happy. And he gave Omar lots of money and gave him a declaration that wherever he wanted to travel throughout the land of Palestine, he would be free to do so. And that's what he did. From that day forth, Omar travelled the land like a free man. And wherever he went, he told people the story of his brother Noah and the fish. He did many, many wonderful things. But there was one thing he would not do. Eat fish.
Ready for a little musical interlude. So we've got from Omar and the story to Omar sitting right here. Would you give us a tune or two?
Yeah.
Say something about your instrument and this style of music, because maybe people are
So
curious.
this is called the gimbri. So it's a 3-string bass. Some people call it sentir from like other parts of Morocco, like Marrakesh. It's basically it's like a pentatonic scale. So you've got 3 strings. You've got like the D and D, low and high, and then you've got G. Then the keys that you play is like the, and it's made from a carved piece of wood, palm tree. It's made in my hometown in Morocco, so and you've got camel skin. Here it's quite very thick, so it's really low, and then you've got like either sheep or goats, goats. So that's what they used to use for fiddles maybe a long time ago. And it's used for a style of music called Gnawa. In Morocco they use it for like spiritual healing ceremonies, where a lot of one man will be playing this gimbri, and then you will have like maybe 10 or 12 people playing kind of like castanets, from metal. And then I would be singing something, and then everyone else would be playing the karakab and singing chorus to me. So I do that on my own here. If you want me to show you a song that you can sing along with me, that'll be. You guys like singing?
Yeah.
So if you never heard of this music, you just type Gnawa music and you'll find a lot about it online. All the stories. This one is called Sudani Manayus, about like people from Sudan. So there's a lot of songs that are spiritual or like religious, but there's also stories about people like saints or like just travelers, a lot of that kind of thing. So this one is about Sudan, because Gnawa music originally really that comes from west of Africa. So it's from black African descendants that moved to Morocco maybe 900 years ago. They all live in different parts of Morocco, and that's where the music. So we believe maybe Guinea, Sudan, Mali. So there's a lot of songs about different tribes of these places. So this one is called Sudani Mario. So this song is basically related to like one clap. So if you go like, so that's the clap. Second part. have to be patient with me, you know. It's a process, and then otherwise, so the first one. So that one would be. You play like that. And then you catch with the last one. So it would be like you catch that. Which is same as the one you do when you do the solo clap. That's exactly what you do at same time. So you always catch that last one, whatever you do. So the second one. Sudani manayu, shashiyeti. Sudani manayu. So your words will be shashiyeti bambara. Shashiya is a kind of a hair that we use for traditional Gnawa dancing. And then bambara is just a tribe in Mali. It's another tribe that we sing about in this song. So if I say Sudani manayu, shashiyeti bambara. Here we go. I don't need you guys.
Sheshieti Bambara.
Exactly, yeah. Sudani manayu, Sudani manayu, Sheshieti Bambara. Waye ya waye, Sheshieti Bambara. Biwaya mule, Sheshieti Bambara. So when you do that, it's very easy, you know. You know, so when you say Shashia Bambara, you need to keep the one clap as well, you know. You want that? So you go like so you all the two things together. So you do it? Are you ready to do it? Yeah. Yeah. Fulani, Africa manayu, Biwaya mule, Biwaya mujud, it's very good. Sudani manayu, Sudani manayu.
Yeah, so nice, thank you.
So that's Shashiati Bambara song. If someone asks if you know any Gnawa songs, you go, yeah, I know. Shashiati Bambara.
Okay, I suppose I better tell a story before I have to clap badly. So the next story, so we learned so many things in Jordan, so many musings on storytelling and culture and food and history, but the thing that really stuck out for me was that one of the reasons people say salam alaikum when you meet someone that offer this blessing is because if you meet a ghoul or a ghoul and you do not bless them when you greet them, they will eat your bones before your flesh. So it's very important that you bless a ghoul when you meet them, or else you have that horrible, horrific experience. Which leads us on to our next story. You ready for another story?
Yeah.
So this is one from Syria, which, I started working on whilst in Jordan, and I'm telling for the first time. So it's kind of exciting to tell something there was a woodcutter who was rich in children, but poor in wealth, and also, if I'm being honest, in brains. He had 10 children and an adoring wife, a hard-working wife. You have to be a hard-working wife for 10 children. A devoted wife. So he was wealthy in home, but every day he worked as a woodcutter. He would walk from his house through the town to the top of the hill, and he would chop sticks. He would gather dry sticks, make a bundle, walk back down the hill, walk to market, sell these dry sticks for firewood. And with what meagre coin he got from firewood, he would buy food. He'd be lucky to come home with a loaf of bread and an onion just to flavour the bread. On a good day, he'd have a few olives just to give it some flavour, or a clove of garlic. 1 loaf of bread and an onion amongst a family of 12. Times were hard. And there was one day, like any other, who walked to the top of this hill. He looked around and there were no sticks left. Someone else had been there in his absence. He thought, well, where am I going to go? How am I going to earn enough coin to buy a loaf of bread today? And he stared from the top of the hill across the town. There was another forested hill. So he made his way back down, made his way through the streets, climbed that hill, chopped sticks, put them on his back. It was late by the time he got to market. He was only able to buy a loaf of bread and 1 clove of garlic. And he was making his way through the dusky light when he heard a jingling and a jangling. He heard footsteps. And then he saw someone emerging from the darkness with long flowing robes, fine robes, wrists and neck and ears adorned with precious silver and stones, turquoise around her neck and bright eyes in the darkness. And when she set her bright eyes upon him, there was a flicker of recognition. My brother! It is you, my brother! It's been so long since you've been to my house. My brother, where have you been? And as his eyes adjusted to the dark light and he set eyes upon this woman, he thought, I've never seen her in my life. My brother, it has been so long. My brother, how have you been? How are the wife? How are the children? He was thinking, well, she's acting like she knows me. She knows about my wife and my kids, and, well, I am a bit forgetful. Are you sure that I know you? My brother, don't disown me now. It's bad enough that you do not visit. To disown me now is terrible. It is shameful. Our parents would be turning in their graves. You bring shame upon our ancestors. How can you scorn me like this? And she threw her hands in the air. She started weeping and raising her hands to the heavens. My brother, how do you not remember me? I thought, well, she is making quite a fuss. And she does seem to recognise me. And yeah, I'm not the sharpest tool in the box. And she looks very wealthy. Maybe it's handy to have a wealthy sister like that. He goes, we're related, are we? Of course we are, of course we are. And she looked at him, she looked at how threadbare his clothes were, how gaunt and skinny he looked. My brother, you are working too hard, you're not eating enough. Come back to my house. You will feed on fine foods. Come home. Don't worry about this loaf of bread. I will give you food for your children. I will cook up a feast. Present delicacies, the likes of which you have rarely sampled. He thought, well, I'm not saying no to a free meal. And so he followed her through the streets. They got to the richer part of town where the houses got bigger and bigger and bigger till they came to this palatial home. There were animals, there were chickens and goats outside in the yards, there were marble floors, they were led into the kitchen, and there was the pantry. Sacks of grain, sacks of pulses, dried fruits, aromatic herbs, spices, meats, drying, hanging from the rafters, and his belly rumbled, his mouth watered. He hadn't even seen that sort of food in years. Rest, my brother, rest, sit down. Relax while I cook up some food. So the woodcutter, the brother, he sat there, he sipped sweet tea, he ate dried fruits. As she braised the meat, as she placed saffron in the rice, as she chopped the vegetables and cooked up this mighty stew. She presented it in a ceramic pot, and he hadn't eaten like that since his very own wedding day. He ate and ate and ate till his belly was full, till he was contented. But actually a sister like this is no bad thing to have. My brother, I can see life is hard. Life has not treated you as well as it has me. Bring your family. Bring your wife. Bring your children. There is more than enough room for all of us. There is more than enough food for you all to be well fed. And he thought about the life he could offer them with one loaf of bread and an onion every day in this back-breaking work. And he thought about this more mouth-watering food and what it would be like for his whole family to enjoy that day after day after day. There was no choice, really. So he thanked his sister, he went home, he spoke to his wife and said, this story, he said he'd met his long-lost sister. A sister? I've never heard of a sister before. No, but she's really wealthy and she definitely knows me and she's got really nice food. I'm not sure about this, said the wife. Look, I'm the one chopping sticks. I'm the one having to scrounge about for an onion every day. We're going. And so the next day, against his wife's better judgment, she gathered up the children. They took their one scrawny cow by a rope and they led them through the streets, led them to this rich part of town and led them to the wealthy sister's house. And the children were delighted, sliding on the marble floors, inspecting her jewellery and tasting these food. Not only did she have fine foods, she had sweets. She had baklava, she had every sweet you can imagine, and the children gorged themselves. Day after day, they would wake, have a breakfast, they would play, they would have lunch, the father would nap, they would have dinner, they would sit under the stars at night, they would go to bed. Eating and resting and playing, it was the life of luxury, and the days turned into weeks, and the wife thought, I'm just not sure about this, I don't remember this sister, not even at our wedding, I don't remember seeing her. You've never talked about her before, are you sure she's your sister? You've never liked my family. I've always got something to say about them. Hold your tongue, we should be grateful for what we're being given. So, well, you can't tell some people. And the days turned to weeks, the weeks turned into months, and the children when they arrived, their faces had been as sharp as the blades of knives. Their faces grew round and plump, like ripe peaches. And it was once their faces were round and plump that they were sleeping peacefully in their bed one night. And the cow was tied up outside, tied to the post at the door. And the sister made her way down the steps. And she tiptoed down the stairs towards the sleeping family. And as she tiptoed, she said, "Oh, my fat and flour is gone, but now they're plump. It won't be long." Do you want to try that? Okay, so this half. All my fat and flour is gone. 1, 2, 3.
All my fat and flour is gone.
It's not very ghoulish, but it's accurate. And now they are plump, it won't be long.
And now they're plump, it won't be long.
Got work to do this side, okay. Try again all together. 1, 2, 3.
All my fat and flour is gone. Now they're plump, it won't be long.
And she was creeping down the stairs, and there was the cow. And the cow set its eyes upon her and spoke these words: "My eyes will burn you like a flame. My horns will gore and tear and maim. Return back to where you came." Rawr! She went back up the stairs. Knew not to mess with this cow.
Mad.
The next day, she crept down the stairs again, rubbing her hands together, licking her lips, letting out this chant.
All my fat and flour is gone. Now they're plump, it won't be long.
My eyes will burn you like a flame. My horns will tear and gore and maim. Get back upstairs from where you came. And off she went, back upstairs. Third night. Children getting plumper by the day. Husband getting plumper by the day. All he's doing nowadays is eating and napping. Talking. She crept down the stairs. Even but let out the same chant. 1, 2, 3.
All my fat and flour is gone.
And the cow kicked the door. And she said it again. 1, 2, 3.
All my fat and flour is gone. Now they're plump, it won't be long.
My eyes will burn you like a flame. My horns will tear and gore and maim. Return upstairs from whence you came. Ah. And off she went. But as the cow had kicked the door, the mother had awoken and heard everything the she-ghoul and the cow had said. Husband, I heard something very strange last night. Oh, you on again? You're paranoid. There's nothing to complain about. Look at this fine house. Look at how well fed the children are. I'm not going back to chopping sticks. And so they woke. They went about their business, and the sister came to the woodcutter and said, my brother, long have we feasted upon the stores of my larder, but they are not endless. You know I'm happy to be generous with all I have, but today I fancy something special. Today I fancy a nice juicy steak and some beef stew. How about we slaughter that scrawny old cow of yours? You don't need it anymore. We can eat the beef stew. You would not deny your kind sister this, would you? He thought, well, after all she's given us, there's nothing else I can do. And so the children wept as the father slaughtered the cow and butchered the cow. And they wept as the wife braised the steaks, as they made a thick beef stew. And the oldest daughter was the only one who could hold her nerve and carry the remnants of Daisy up the stairs. And she was weeping. And she was remembering all the happy times with Daisy as she walked up the stairs to her auntie's room. And she was so distraught she forgot to knock, and she prized open the door and peered inside, and there was her auntie in her true form. Naked, long matted hair, gnarled, hairy body, flaming eyes, and all around her hung from rafters human corpses, drying like Serrano ham. It is not beef I wish to eat. Upon those children I will feast. And she almost dropped the bowl, but she held her nerve. She went back downstairs. She said, Mother, I saw her. She's not any ordinary person. I think she's a ghoul. And I think she wants to eat us. The mother told the father, you've been listening to too many fairy tales. Ghouls, genies, what nonsense. There's nothing to worry about. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going back to chopping sticks. That night, in the depth of darkness, creeping down the stairs, came the she-ghoul, still in her wealthy sister form. 1, 2, 3.
All my fat and flour is gone, but now they're plump, it won't be long.
No cow. Her long fingernails reached out. She clicked open the door. She crept in alongside the bed. She could see the moon shining through and highlighting all those children's chubby faces. And she reached out to see if they were truly fat enough to eat. And as she was reaching out to check each of them, the clever wife who drunk coffee before bed said, my sister, what are you doing? Oh, it is cold tonight. It is a cold, cold night. I don't want you to get a chill. I thought I would tuck you in. We don't want the cold to bite. And she made her way back upstairs, content that finally this family were fat enough to feast upon. The next day the mother got up. Husband still wasn't listening, still not interested. She thought, okay. Dressed all her children in white and cream, light-coloured clothes. She got some powdered lentils and she made a soup. All through the morning she made a soup, and at lunchtime she fed her children, and they splattered this lentil soup all the way down their shirts and t-shirts and tunics. They made a right mess, as children do with soup. And she, seeing them in their stained clothes, she turned to her sister and said, my sister, look at the mess the children have got into. Won't you let me borrow? I know you're so generous. Won't you let me borrow the big copper pot? I will take it down to the river. I will heat some water. I will clean their clothes. Then we'll come back in the afternoon. Wow. Sister knew. The ghoul knew that clean children always taste better. Very well, take my pot. I will be waiting. And so the mother rounded up the children. She took the pot on her back. She walked down from the wealthy sister's house on the hill down to the river. She filled the pot with water. She made a fire. But she chopped lots of green wood, lots of fresh wood. And she made a bonfire. And she lit it. As you may know, when you burn green wood, it lets a lot of smoke. And so it became smokier and smokier and smokier. She took the shirts off the children, strung up a washing line and hung out each of their shirts so it would flap and dance in the wind. And then with the smoke billowing, with the shirts flapping, she goes, 1, 2, 3, 10. What? Run. And she grabbed the children and they scampered off in the other direction, their escape concealed by the billowing smoke. Well, after a while, the she-ghoul was getting hungry. She looked outside, still washing clothes. She could see the pot, she could see the smoke, she could see the washing line. Her belly was rumbling now. And she waited a little longer and peered out again, down to the river, pot, fire, washing line. As the sun began to sink in the sky, she got suspicious. She went down there herself and she saw the pot, the children's clothes, no juicy children. She let out a hideous shriek. Roar! John, tell me that's a bit weird. She let out a hideous shriek. 1, 2, 3. Why did I fatten them when I should have eaten them? And this shouting, this shrieking from the bottom of the hill was enough to wake up the woodcutter from his afternoon nap. He did a large meal. He was sleeping in the grape arbour, and he'd heard this shrieking from the bottom of the hill. Why did I fatten them and I should have eaten them? Why did I fatten them? I should have eaten them. He heard the voice of his sister coming up the hill, getting closer and closer and closer. He looked around. No wife, no children. Realised that her knife was hot and sharp and intended only for him. My brother! My brother! Where am I going to hide? In the middle of the yard there was the midden, the rubbish pile. He managed to squeeze under the rubbish pile, under the old bones and cans and papers, and he hid there, trying to breathe silently, hoping that she wouldn't find him. She flew into the yard like a storm, snorting when she breathed. My brother, it is time for you to return the generosity. You cannot hide. And she looked high, she looked low, she looked in the chicken shed, she looked under the stairs, she looked in the cupboards, everywhere she looked, but no sign of the brother. He can't be far. I need a better view. And she saw this pile of rubbish in the yard. I'll stand on top of the midden, on top of the rubbish pile, and peer out. And so she clambered on top of the rubbish pile, and the pressure of the she-ghoul's weight pressed down upon the woodcutter's full stomach, and his belly rumbled. Oh, my headscarf is making strange sounds. And she whipped off her headscarf, threw it to one side, and her long matted hair tumbled out. I need a better view, and she raised up on her tiptoes. Her tiptoes pressed down on his belly, and he couldn't hold it in. He let out a huge fart. My robes are making strange sounds, and she whipped off her robes to cast them aside, and there she was, all hairy and gnarled and sinuous. She tiptoed even higher. And again his belly rumbled, and she goes, it is not my clothes making the noise, but the rubbish. And she ripped the rubbish one side, ripped it on another, and exposed the trembling woodcutter. her brother underneath. And she pulled him up trembling, looked him in the eye and said, I am a fair woman. I am a woman who likes to give choice. Which part of you shall I sink my teeth into first? He said, first, eat my ears, which were so deaf to my wife's fears. And then eat my arms that dragged my family into harm. And then eat my legs that did not follow my clever wife when she begged. And then, until there was nothing left of the woodcutter to answer. And I don't know if that she-ghoul ever caught up with the clever wife and those 10 children. I like to think she's clever enough that they managed to evade her grip and were not seduced by her feasting. Or maybe, by the time that came, the woodcutter was more than enough of a meal for her anyway. That was the end of him on that fateful day. And that is the end of that story. Told an early version of that to my daughter a couple of years ago. She's like, it can't end like that.
حرام عليك أخوتي
finish.
I'll play it.
Yeah. There was once a man called Muhammad Amin, and he liked nothing better than riding on his fine horse and hunting. And that was what he spent most of his days doing until he came to a great plateau. And upon that plateau he saw a tent. It was more beautiful than anything he had ever seen, with ribbons, bells, flags, the black canvas fluttering in the breeze. He felt as though he had stepped into a story of 1,001 nights. And more beautiful than the tent was the young woman that came to the door of the tent with her long black braids and jewels in her hair. She was carrying a jug, and she made her way down to the river to scoop water. And Muhammad made his way to the river. "I am Muhammad," he said. And she, with her beautiful almond eyes, smiled and said, "I am Aini." And in Arabic, Aini, if I'm pronouncing it right, means my eyes. And for Muhammad, her eyes were like stars. Well, from that day forth, they met each other at the river, and their love grew stronger and stronger. Muhammad wanted to marry Aini, and he said to his father, go to the camp and ask for her hand in marriage, but such a union was forbidden. She in her tent, and Muhammad in his fine house, no. But Muhammad would take no for an answer. He went himself, and he brought Aini on his horse back to his house. "Here is my wife," he said. "We will be married this night." And so what could his parents do? "No good will come of it," said the father. "It will bring a curse." But musicians were sent for, and a feast was had, and there was a wedding. But perhaps poor Muhammad was cursed, because he never woke up the next day. Muhammad was dead. And the poor wife Aini was mad with grief. She shrieked and she cried, but there was no place for her in the house. She was sent forth. She went to find her family's tent, but it too was gone. And so she did what she knew. She gathered herbs and plants, and she made medicine, and she sold them at the doors in exchange for food. And this was how Amy lived. And after some weeks, she realised that she was with child, the fruit of their love, their short love. And some months later, she had a little boy. And at the moment of his birth, Amy was visited by 3 angels. And one said, "Call him Masroon." And the other said, "He will love a woman called Layla." And the third said, "And his home is in the stars." Well, the vision of these angels was so strong that Amy did as the first angel said, and she called her son Masroon. And he was a good, strong boy. And he grew up to be a great tender of goats and sheep. And so, with his mother, they wandered from place to place. She with her herbs, he tending the animals. And they did well. They were popular. But one day, Masroon had come to that high plateau, and his heart almost stopped when he saw such a beautiful tent with bells and ribbons and flags, the black canvas flapping in the breeze. And a young woman came to the door of the tent with long black braids and jewels in her hair, and again his heart thudded in his ribs. And she too went down to the river, and Masroon followed. And he introduced himself. "I am Masroon." And she smiled. "I am Layla," she said. And hardly knowing where the words came from, he said, "I love you." And Masroon and Layla, their love grew and grew and grew. And Masroon, of course, he wanted to wed his love. He said to his mother, Go to the camp and ask for her hand." But Amy already knew that this would not work. She, with her camp, with her tents, and so she did not go. And Masroon, he grew more and more frustrated. He wanted to wed Layla. But every day he went down to the camp, and down by the river, that was their courting place. And being a shepherd, he played a little flute called nai. Is that right? Nai?
A nay.
No, a nay. A nay. And often he serenaded his beautiful Layla. And while he was thus serenading her, a servant came from the camp, calling, "Layla, Layla, your father wants you, you must come now." And Layla swung round and said to her beloved, "Wait right there, I'll be straight back." And Layla followed the servant back to the high plateau where the tent had been taken down, and already the camels were making their way. And her father was gesturing, "Come, come, Layla, we are leaving." And the servant took Layla. And so she had to go with her family. And she cried, "No, but I must go to Masroom." "No, you must not." And so Layla journeyed, and often she wept, and always she wanted to be back at the river. But months turned into seasons, many, many seasons, until one day Layla's family came back to that region, and she recognized it, and she ran down to the river. But when she got there, she looked around and cried, "I am too late," for there was nothing but a bush and a tree. But from that bush there came a voice, "No, Layla, you are not too late." And she turned to see amongst that bush feet, legs, a body, arms entwined with branches, and in her lover's head a nest of birds. "Masroom," she said. "I did not leave," Masroom said. "I stayed right here." And when they looked into each other's eyes, Masroom and Layla turned into stardust. And Masroom, he became the Western Star. And Layla, she became the Eastern Star. And as they had done on the earth, so in the heavens they travelled, chasing each other. But once in the spring and once in the autumn, the Western Star and the Eastern Star come together. And if you are lucky enough to be out on a starry night on one of those auspicious nights, and you look up and see Masroom and Layla together, then you too will be blessed with eternal love.
Some inspiration to go stargazing on your way home. Those clear, crisp skies. And that brings us to a close. Thank you all for coming out on this cold night where we've journeyed through music and song and stories from warmer climes. Just to finish, there is a little footnote. There are CD. If you want to contribute something more to Sumbala, who offer emergency aid especially in Gaza right now, there are CDs donated by Gica upstairs, and you can take one and then go online and make a donation. So that's upstairs if you want to offer a little bit more.
It's basically give what you like. There's a pile of CDs, take them away. It was made in 2014, and it's Eastern European Jewish klezmer. It's fiddle, guitar, double bass, and I think I got caught by digital age. Nobody's got if you've got a CD player, or if you know someone who's got a CD player, please do take one, and any donations, very grateful.
Cool. Yeah, thank you all for coming. Thanks to Gica.
weekend, St Andrew's Day. So let us pray that come it may, as come it will for all that man to man the world o'er shall brothers be for all that.
Sing along.
The generosity of his heart, so thanks to Sandy at the back for okay, that's us, thanks for coming. Nice.